With the ever increased focus from Google's side on content quality on our sites, can you still outsource content today? And are there any new things that we should be aware of before we just start outsourcing content to external writers? I've outsourced thousands of articles over the last many years, and there are some things that I do very differently today than what I did just a couple of years ago. And in this video, I want to talk a little bit about that. So first, today I often sort my articles for my sites into, you can say, into two buckets, in two categories. And the categories in one bucket I can outsource to external writers with very little experience, and the other articles I would only outsource to people with real experience, maybe even experts who really know a lot about the niche. And to me, that's a very important distinction to make today. You shouldn't just grab a ton of content and outsource it to any content agency or just a whole bunch of writers, because then you'll end up with a lot of content that's not really up to speed, where it might have some wrong facts in it and basically just bad content because they don't know what they're talking about. But I would say there's still a lot of content and a lot of topics for most niches that you can outsource to people with little to no experience in the niche. So I mentioned these two buckets, or these two categories. Some that I would outsource to almost anybody, as long as they are a good writer, of course, and topics that I would only outsource to somebody who knows this niche well. And let me give you a few examples of topics that I would feel comfortable outsourcing to somebody who's not really experienced with the niche. For example, this is something where you only need to research very basic facts. Something like, where is X made? Like, where is this chair made? And maybe there are different models you can go over for specific types and models of this product, and you can dive into which country produced it and which factories and all that good stuff. Because as you see, that's a very basic fact. It's hard to get wrong, right? And something like, how noisy is X? Again, this is a very basic property and something that's easy for people to research. But here you should be aware that you shouldn't produce an article like how noisy is something, because there's nothing to go into. You need to have like a range of models and a range of different types of models and stuff. For example, if you go over all specific types of cars and stuff and write how noisy they are, because there needs to be something more than just one or two numbers, because otherwise people will just be satisfied with what they find in the featured snippet up there in Google. We need to have enough that we can entice them with a good, clever title to actually go over to our site and read about it, right? Or for example, does X have Y, for example? Does this laptop have HDMI cables? Or which ports do you find on this specific device? Then you can dive into the different models, the different brands, and show people which ports do they in fact have an HDMI port or whatever. So again, it's very, very basic research where you don't need to be an expert. You might not even need to have ever held this product in your hand. And then we have this other bucket here that I would be very cautious about outsourcing today to external writers, unless you vetted them well, because if you find a good writer who knows about the niche, you can definitely outsource anything. You can always find somebody who's even smarter than you, and that's what I try to do for most of my sites. But this is a very important distinction to make, and here are a few examples of articles I would not outsource to somebody who is not experienced with the niche. For example, X versus Y. If you want to compare two different products, many times I see very, very poor articles with this when I do site reviews and stuff, because if you have no clue what you're talking about, it's just hard to read a comparison between two different similar types of software, because they will get it wrong, trust me. Or something like, how do you use X? If you never used it, you don't know how to use it, right? Or for example, how to fix something on your trampoline, your fridge, your whatever. If you want to teach people how to fix something or how to replace something or how a specific part works or why this is broken or why this and that, that's also topics where you would need real life experience. You would need to have this product, and otherwise it would just be bad content. So I'd say it's important also to have consistency, to have an editor. That can be yourself, or that can be a third-party editor, somebody you hire to come in and help you do this, to take all this content if you're using multiple writers and make sure that they all sort of look the same, have the same tone of voice, so it doesn't look super outsourced and mass produced. So Google has an opinion about this, and we want to see here what they say about mass-produced content in their guidelines. Is the content mass-produced by or outsourced to a large number of creators, or spread across a large network of sites, so that individual pages or sites don't get as much attention or care? And I would very much say that the emphasis is on the latter here. It has to do with whether the content gets the love that it needs. If it's just quickly mass produced and nobody checks it, it's just rushed and it's thrown up there across a lot of sites, it's pretty easy for Google to figure that out. Probably not from, what can you say, scanning the text or when the spider and the crawlers come by your site. I don't think they can see how fast this content is produced, and they can definitely not fact check your articles. But they can see how people online react to the content. They can see, and when they land on your site, how long time they end up on your site. There's a ton of little user signals. They can see how many people went back to Google, clicked another result, and now they stayed there a little bit longer, or maybe much longer. And then they will start de-ranking you in Google. But they can also see your reputation online to see like what's people's general opinion about the site and the articles, and what do people say when they link to this stuff. If somebody mentioned this article or articles from your site across different forums and communities, Facebook, social media, whatever, when it gets shared, which it will if you write articles that hasn't been written before, like I teach you to with this underserved technique, then you will have attention here and there because you'll be the only article around these topics, right? That gives us some attention. And then if the content is really bad, then you don't want Google to see this, because they will just pick up that people say this was a bad article, this fact was wrong, and they will sort of pick up on all these negative words around every mention of your site. And that's not what you want if you want to rank well in Google tomorrow. But of course, outsourcing content and working with a huge pile of writers is absolutely still viable. It's still a very good strategy. You just need to make sure that the content doesn't suffer when you do it. Make sure that you still have good content. Don't rush it. Don't try to just push as many articles as possible. I will say that I was guilty of this for quite a while, where I produced so much content that there's just no way we could check any of it. Of course we could if I hired more people, but I just really made sure to get it up there quickly. And that's not what I do today. Today I try to focus more on each article to make sure that every article is the best out there on the topic, because that, I believe, gives us much more traffic today and moving forward. And also, if you couldn't outsource and mass produce content, I mean, all bigger sites would be in trouble, right? What would any huge publication do if they couldn't work with like 50 or 100 writers? So of course you can do that. You just need to make sure that the content side of things doesn't suffer, and that you're not just rushing through a ton of content to get your site filled up with articles that you can monetize as quickly as possible with ads and affiliate. That's not the way to go. Maybe you should hit the brake a little bit there. Just make sure that every piece of article out there is good, because then you're doing exactly what Google tells you to do, and that's the way to go. So if you already did this, like I did on a couple of sites, there are things you can do to fix this. As soon as possible, you should hire somebody who knows what they're talking about. Get them to check these articles. I work with, I think, 4 or 5 or 6 people right now to fact check across my sites. And they are all specialists in their own field. They know everything about boats or RVs, and also across other sites where I feel like some of the content that we put up there was a little bit rushed, and sometimes very rushed. Like we just wrote it too quickly and the editing process was too fast. So now I have these people checking the articles. I sort of put them back into the queue, and now they just read through them and they do little edits. Sometimes they will replace a part entirely, and some articles will demand a complete rewrite, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. So that's my process for it right now. It might change because this is a pretty new development in my publishing business here. I've only been doing this for a short while, and I'm excited to see where this takes the content in terms of rankings, and also when people talk about it. I'm excited to follow what people say about my sites online, now that I know that every piece of content on my sites is just maybe not the very best, but at least a very, very good, solid article on the web. And I know that the facts are good, and every you can say every advice there is safe, and it's just generally good advice. So of course this takes time. and time costs money. So this will take up your own time, or you need to pay somebody to do this. But if you are at a place where you feel like you can outsource and mass produce content, then you'll also have probably pretty good solid income from the site. Because if you are producing, let's say like 30, 50, or like me, 100 articles every month, then you will be earning a good deal of money, at least pretty soon. So you should definitely put some of that money back into the editing part and the proof reading part and the fact checking part to make sure that all the articles are up to speed. And then you need to train the writers, because if you just give the writers a headline and then say, here you go, write the best content for the web with this headline, that's not the way to go. You need to work with your writers, you need to train them. Personally, I have my editors training my writers right now, so I develop the training material. I give my editors very, very clear instruction, and they will push this forward to the writers so they all know exactly how to write for the web, and also how to do good research and how to cite sources and all that good stuff. And I want the writers to know that if they're uncomfortable writing a piece or a specific paragraph or something, they can always come back to the editor or me and tell me, this is not a topic for me, I don't know what I'm talking about here, I don't feel like I can produce the best piece of content here. So let them know that this is definitely something they can do, and if they come back to you with a piece of content, you just let them know that they can always get another topic to write on. So it's not like they're losing their work, and it's not like they have to meet a certain word count, because that's when things go wrong. You need to make sure that the writers feel comfortable coming back to you or the editor and telling you that maybe this subheading does not even belong in the article, or maybe this article was just wrong to begin with. For example, why this bike here is a good starter mountain bike. If it's not, then you shouldn't write the article. And you need the writer to be comfortable telling you that, so you will be aware of that. So train your writers to think for themselves and let them know that you want to produce the best possible content. And if they somehow feel like this cannot be that, or this will not be the best content out there, tell them to let you know and reward them for this. Maybe give them a little bonus if this happens, so they know that this is something that makes you happy and this is the direction you're taking the site in. And something else you can do to help your writers produce greater content and also sort of to have it more, what can you say, in line with the existing content on your site so it doesn't look rushed and mass produced, is to work with templates. Many times it's a great idea for you to write the first article when you are moving into a new area. Let's say you wanted to write like 30 different articles about how to use specific models of a product, whatever. Then you just go about and write the first one, or have your best writer produce the first article there and give the next writer this as a template so they can see what good content looks like. Because if you don't train your writers, if they don't know how to write good content, I mean, how could you ever produce great content for the web, right? And a good example here could be an article like, are Fender guitars good for jazz? If you wrote that article, then you could easily have somebody else write articles about, is this Gibson guitar good for jazz, or is this Ibanez or this Jackson guitar good for jazz? See how now we can produce other articles that are very similar. They're around sort of the same topic, but it's just another model or another product. And then it's very, very easy for this writer to get it right, because they can see this first article and sort of use it as a template. So these are some of the things that I do differently today. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to keep following me and learn these tips from me. And of course, you can always check out my course and see how we build sites together in there with the community. See you guys.